Good evening and good to have you with us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, we've had many discussions in the recent past about just how many lives did we lose to shortage of oxygen in the peak of second wave. We had a big debate around the time when the government gave this answer saying that the states have not told us how many died due to oxygen shortage. You will also remember how we had series of reports, discussions, debates on the oxygen shortage that plagued this country in the second half of April and the first half of May, especially in cities like the national capital, where every day a bunch of hospitals in a desperate bid would even resort to going to social media to talk about how they were running out of oxygen, how they had run out of oxygen, how they couldn't take on more people, how people were dying because they didn't have enough oxygen. One of those instances, the first big one actually, was that of Jaipur Golden Hospital, where the hospital itself claimed that about 25 COVID patients died due to lack of oxygen. On one intervening night, they said 21 COVID patients died due to oxygen shortage. That was then, and that's where it became a big national story. How could we have lost these many lives because the hospital didn't have oxygen? Since then, there have been multiple reports in the court, multiple hearings in the court where various sides have presented their own version of what happened and where the problem was. The most recent one, which is why we are talking about it today, is Delhi police saying and telling the court that no patient died due to shortage of oxygen on the night of April 23rd, April 24th in this Jaipur Golden Hospital. The Delhi police in its report says that the death summaries were obtained by them. From the hospital, they went and got these death summaries, and these death summaries don't mention death caused due to oxygen shortage. Now, while they are waiting for further response from the hospital on any medical negligence, they are waiting for a response from DMC on any medical negligence. Now, it also goes on to quote what the hospital said in its response to Delhi police's notice, what was found by a panel of doctors that was set up by the Delhi government. Now, the panel of doctors that was set up by the Delhi government also allegedly said that the deaths were due to natural causes and could not be linked to shortage of oxygen. This, in fact, was part of another report submitted to the High Court. In this Delhi police report, it says the hospital claims that they were seeing a daily average death count of 3. And then suddenly one day, when they were starved for oxygen, the death count went to 21 within 7 to 8 hours. And under those conditions, there appeared to be a linkage between deaths and deficient oxygen. So essentially, here is the Delhi police saying no deaths due to oxygen at this specific hospital. You have earlier an example of the Delhi government's established panel, appointed panel of doctors saying deaths were not due to oxygen shortage but natural causes. You have the hospital that earlier said 21 people died because oxygen supply was over. And the hospital now hedging itself, playing it safe, going back in a sense on its words and saying, well, at that point it looked like so. It looked as if because the oxygen dipped for 4 patients who died at the same point in the night at 9:45 p.m. Because on a daily basis they were seeing 3 deaths and 4 deaths, suddenly there were 21 deaths. Because they did not have oxygen and they had said that for the next 30 hours, they used up their oxygen in that 30-hour time period, it appeared that people died due to lack of oxygen. But the hospital, it seems, didn't go ahead and put it in writing because the death summaries that the police has obtained doesn't put this as a cause. What is going on in our country? Are we a system that refuses to put it in black and white what happened? And are we a system, a set of governments and police forces and doctors and hospitals who will refuse to acknowledge the reality? Do we genuinely believe that by whitewashing it, by now not putting it on paper, they can make a country of 125 crore believe that we did not make a mess out of it? They can make the world believe that all our casualties are because of COVID, comorbidities, or other natural causes. Why are we so averse to accepting the truth? And if it isn't the truth, and if indeed people did not die due to lack of oxygen in this country, then why was hospital after hospital standing up and claiming so? Either they are under pressure now or they were under pressure then. Who has been lying to us, misleading us, playing over statistics, playing with lives of people and denying us even that basic truth? To those families, denying them even that basic truth, how did they lose their loved one? I say good evening to Mamta Kale of the BJP, Syed Asad Abbas, political analyst, the Aam Aadmi Party backer who joins us this evening, Dr. M.C. Mishra, former director of AIIMS, Dr. Ravi Malik, CMD of Felix Hospital, Abantika Ghosh, health editor for The Print and author of Billions Under Lockdown, the inside story of India's fight against COVID. And I want to put it on record that we did try to get in touch with the Aam Aadmi Party, but their media cell told us they are not okay participating in this conversation. A conversation where the Aam Aadmi Party would have had to explain to us how they made this a big political issue, how they spoke about oxygen shortage day after day after day in the courts. And their own appointed panel of doctors then turned around and said that at this specific hospital, 21 people or 25 people did not die due to lack of oxygen. I will not get those answers tonight, and I want to tell my viewers about that. But let's go across to those who have joined us this evening. And I want to understand how this works. Is it a technical writing problem that's helping us deny the truth, Dr. Mishra? If the death summaries don't mention oxygen shortage or lack of oxygen as a cause, is that because procedurally that's not considered as a reason for death? You look at what organ failed, what went wrong within the body, and just write that down. How can it be that we are now telling the country nobody died due to lack of oxygen?
Thank you for putting up this discussion. At the outset, I would say we are neither honest nor transparent in general about anything. And when it comes to oxygen being responsible for deaths, at least during the ongoing pandemic, 2 hospitals I remember, or 3 in Delhi distinctly. Batra Hospital was one, where they claimed that 12 patients died because of oxygen shortage, about 24 or 25 in Sir Gangaram Hospital, and in Jaipur Golden Hospital also. Rest of the hospitals did have a problem of the oxygen level going down, but then there was timely refilling was happening. I know personally because one of the hospitals I am associated with in Greater Noida, where we were on our toes and we were actually having our heartbeats going up when the oxygen level in the this liquid oxygen tank was going down, but then the inox is very close to us, so they were filling up within hours. So that was happening with most hospitals. The lot of people actually could not get the oxygen in domiciliary settings where they were when they were not getting beds. But in hospital, now once saying that they had shortage and people died, and then coming back and saying that no one died is lack of transparency, lack of data managing, and also proper audit. Because this is something, why should they hide it if it happened like that? So that is the big question, and now that is answered by one of the political parties not coming on the discussion. So you can gauge what is happening in Delhi.
Yes, and you know, so much of political noise was generated, and perhaps in a way rightly so, when that answer was submitted in the parliament that said, states haven't told us about any oxygen deaths. But here is an example where the state can come and tell us about the oxygen deaths and is not doing so. Dr. Ravi Malik, is there an explanation as to, is there a possibility that at that time, under that much pressure, the hospital just thought this was a reason to put out these, alarms to get more oxygen, but at the end of the day, they didn't really have evidence to say people died because of lack of oxygen?
Look, one thing is very clear. Everyone knows that even in the public domain, in open media, both the hospitals which Dr. M.C. Mishra has mentioned, they have claimed and they have said that patients have died in their hospital. In fact, the medical superintendent of one of the hospitals cried with tears that some of the patients have died because of the deficiency of the oxygen. So that is what is the state of affairs. So what we need right now is that with transparency and with the good, strong and professional team, we should go into the depth of the issue so that these kind of things should not happen. Right now, we are living in 2021. No death should happen in hospital because of oxygen deficiency in the hospital. Also, I would like to say that how many deaths have occurred because of oxygen deficiency at home. That also needs to be investigated thoroughly, because a lot of people probably have also died because there is no doubt there was deficiency of oxygen, there was paucity of oxygen at that time. Having said that, what we, under the backdrop of all these facts, what we right now need is definitely a transparent investigation into the thing. Now, as a medical professional, I can tell you there are two issues. Number one, the oxygen supply, it got interrupted. And number two, there were deaths. Now, whether the deaths were actually because of the oxygen interruption in the oxygen supply, that is a matter of investigation, and a thorough or professional team should investigate into the matter. But as you have rightly said, that the death census increased all of a sudden as compared to the previous days during that unfaithful day. The number of deaths, they increase. So it points that we should, with transparency, we should thoroughly investigate the matter so that these kind of things then never happen in future. So it is very important, and I'm really thankful to you for raising up this issue. And in fact, with the danger of third wave looming overhead, we should be very clear why this thing happened. Even if there was interruption of the supply, who was at fault? Who caused this interruption and what was the reason for that? So it is important for us to, it should come in the public domain that what was the reason and why these deaths they happened, and also to take the precautionary measures that such deaths they don't happen in future.
Yes, so like I highlighted, one part was how the hospital in its response to the Delhi police, Abantika, said that, the preceding day there were 3 deaths. COVID patients' average mortality per day was actually 2 deaths, and the day after that it was 3, and on this day 21 people died. They also go into details of how the oxygen levels on 23rd of April dropped to 41 at the oxygen pressure at about 9:30 p.m. and that's when they began to see the casualties take place. How actually for the previous 30 hours, they had not got any refills. So the hospital puts across all of these points in its response to the Delhi police notice, and then says, after initial scrutiny of patients' death-related reasoning, prima facie, at that moment, it appeared that in 4 cases there was drop of oxygen pressure, which is an unusual occurrence in such numbers. However, it is also a fact that these patients were on ventilator. It was only in the above circumstances that the hospital sought to draw a linkage between oxygen supply and the increased casualties. and accordingly expressed a legitimate concern. Now, Abantika, to me, I don't know, because the hospital also doesn't want to talk about it right now. This is either backtracking for whatever reasons, for lack of evidence or under pressure. But I can't imagine this is the same hospital whose MD was sitting on live television breaking down because he couldn't help people and patients' families.
Yeah, so, this is the case with all hospitals. But one thing is very interesting here, that this hospital, it's making some points, but it is not sort of drawing the conclusion that Delhi police is looking at. There may be counter questions asked to the points it makes, but I want to make one point here. And I mean, before I go into the sort of analysis of what happened then and why whatever is happening now is happening, let us take a very important lesson from all of this and make death audits a culture in every hospital in the country. That is one looking forward point that we should just imbibe from here. Now, it is, we know this has become intensely political. Why just blame the hospital? All state governments who are crying foul, everybody is to blame. So everybody is going by the letter of the ICMR guidelines and not the spirit. Because I was looking at the ICMR guidelines for death reporting. Remember, these were basically drawn up when we were trying to decide, how do you attribute COVID death? I mean, do you attribute to comorbidity, or do you attribute it to COVID? So to that extent, it's very specific to that. But there is one line that I found very interesting. So when it is saying, how do you report the cause of death? It says, state the disease, injury, or complication which caused death, not the mode of dying, such as heart failure, asthenia, etc. To my mind, injury or complication under these two heads, I mean, if you run out of oxygen, then that is certainly a complication. Even if it is not a physiological complication, it is a complication that you did not foresee. So that, in the point that a lot of hospitals are making, that our, reporting, we had no room to report, that's not, I mean, technically, I think that's not correct. Dr. Mishra may be able to enlighten us on that. But clearly the hospital, not just this one, a lot of the other hospitals which were very upfront, Gangaram Hospital, I was just looking at my phone. I have messages after messages from Gangaram Hospital saying we're running out of, this is in their media group, saying we are running out of oxygen. But now suddenly everybody has clammed up. Either it is, like states think it is a matter of their prestige, maybe hospitals have also taken that stand, or they are under political pressure. I cannot say what has happened. In fact, if my sources in the ministry are anything to go by, I believe when the center recently wrote to states saying how many people died of oxygen, you let us know. I believe they've already received some replies, and nobody, I mean, most of them don't actually say that they saw deaths because of oxygen shortage. So I don't really know what has happened, but there seems to be a lot of sort of indifference to what happened, because that is, if there was no indifference, if we were willing to not repeat the mistakes that we made then we would have at least made an honest effort to identify those mistakes now. We are not even doing that. We are not even acknowledging them. That is the problem.
Yes, that is the basic problem. Not only are we refusing to acknowledge it, we are actually finding ways to erase it from history. We are actually finding ways to just completely deny that it even happened, Abbas, and which for me is a problem. How are we going to fix it, and how are we going to be better prepared if today we turn around and hospital after hospital is made to, or they themselves for various reason turns around and says, okay, it seems so at this point of time, now we're not sure. And I'm not blaming any of the hospitals, but something's going on here which the states and the center need to explain to us.
Certainly, Tanvi. Firstly, let me thank you and your editorial team for taking a subject which is most important to the citizens of this country today. Also, let me bring to your notice, I was very keenly listening to Abantika ji, Dr. Mishra Saab, and also Dr. Dikshit ji. The fact of the matter is, being a citizen, also being aware of what happened in the COVID second wave was absolutely disastrous. Undoubtedly, it was the state, the country which was running under a catastrophe of sorts. We also need to understand here that there is no doubt about it. If anyone is legitimately questioning those who died due to the lack of oxygen, is indeed making mockery out of the situation, making mockery out of deaths. It is as a mockery as seeing dead bodies lying in the Ganges. Also, as a matter of fact, let me put this matter very clearly out there. There needs to be an investigation on this front. Be it center, be it the state, be it any respective political party, there needs to be an investigation with respect to all the hospitals coming under the radar, all the administrations of it, and the people who are particularly involved. Because we need to understand, yes, the question that you've asked me and answer it accordingly. If there is no SWOT analysis here, where's the strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? We need to be prepared. Third wave is coming. And of course, the Delta variant being a lot more dangerous. So therefore, the need of the hour is for the respective people in the power, in the government, and also the respective hospitals to understand and not play any sort of hullabaloo. They need to understand only when they're able to recognize those spaces, those loopholes, they will be addressed to it. Also, they need to cater to those fronts which need repairing. There needs to come through of sorts. Only then there could be a better administration, a better form of research, so that this helps them to take care of the next infrastructure coming through. Also an appeal and urge to the state government, to the central government, to the respective police officials and those who are involved. We need to understand that this state matters to the citizens the most. If the citizen isn't taken care of, if there's going to be a lies on the front, if those people who have died, if you're going to question that, it will only result in a doomsday coming forward.
Yeah, because but Abbas, you're absolutely right, and I 100% agree with you on what is important to the people. But what is the centre going to do when, state governments, including the Delhi government, turn around and say there have been no deaths due to oxygen shortage, not just to the centre, because the centre maybe didn't even ask the Delhi government or any other state government. But the Delhi government went and told the court this in the month of May. And since then to now, they haven't had any update for us on it either.
Tanvi, absolutely. I think you've asked a very pointed question and I'll answer it accordingly. Watching this very closely, Tanvi, I'm sure you're aware of this, and many of the people who analyze politics will be aware that there is a friction between the state and the center. Many a times during the first wave, second wave, and now coming the wave, third wave to approach, there is discordial between the state and the center. If our country needs to be headed for much better medical infrastructure to face the third wave, with folded hands, I request the state government and the central government to work in tandem. There have been enough of blame games which have been coming from both sides. So therefore, the state and the center needs to understand that the nation's federal structural system will only work if the two of you come together. There needs to be a better cooperation, less politics, and more development of sorts, which will in the end, as being a functional democracy, it is going to help in the betterment of its citizens. So end to politics, but a better governance must and should come through.
So politics is one aspect, and I think there is also a lot to do with what Abantika was also referring to, and I would call this just apathy or lack of interest in finding out the truth. With government after government, department after department just functioning in a very clinical, mechanical manner, where even if somebody has gone to the court saying, please give us justice, punish the hospital, the plea actually said, punish the hospital for negligence because so many people died. Why did they take on so many patients if they didn't have the oxygen? So the court told the police to go and find out. Now, the police went and started looking at the records, and then they said the records only show died due to natural cause or comorbidities. Similarly, the Delhi government set up a panel, Dr. Mishra. I think there were 4 or 5 doctors, and they also found the same thing. So the Delhi government's response in Delhi High Court was also that 20 deaths were either due to pre-existing conditions, 1 due to lack of specific medicines, in view of natural virulent course of the disease and lack of any evidence suggestive of oxygen shortage in the case records, the committee was of the opinion that shortage of oxygen as cause of death could not be ascertained. Now, so how will, we can say we want another audit, we can say we want another big check, we can say we rewrite the rules, but nobody bothered to maintain these records. Is that what it is, Dr. Mishra?
No, you are right. Basically, look, our hospitals do not do any regular audit. That's a very plain and simple statement I am making. This is something which is very much needed. We can actually grade or give grading to the hospitals on the basis of the outcomes, which is very regular. It happens, I know in trauma, it happens in USA, and every center is graded in that manner. Here, what we are talking is a specifics of oxygen deficiency and deaths. Unless we are honest, again I would say, and transparent, and accept this, at whatever cost comes to that, because it will be sort of a negligence. It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, hospitals, when they were denying patients the bed, they were getting the flack. When they gave the beds and there were no oxygen beds available, I know for sure one person whom I knew very closely, and we lost her. She had a post-kidney transplant patient admitted on an oxygen bed in Fortis Vasant Kunj, and she waited almost 2 weeks or 10 days to get an ICU bed which she needed from the day she was admitted, because there was no ICU bed available, and finally she succumbed to the illness after 2 or 3 weeks. So that was happening, and we could not get beds. I could not get beds for patients. I know that very clearly on many occasions, and I would be actually very apprehensive if somebody was calling for a bed. I could not feel more helpless than during the second wave of infections. But when it comes to what you are discussing here, I think on the day when Parliament session began, the health minister mentioned on the floor of the Parliament that no deaths because of oxygen deficit. And the statement was based on the data or the records or the answers provided by every state and union territory. None of these states accepted this fact that any death due to oxygen deficiency. Similarly, Delhi government also did not give any record of oxygen deaths. They could have actually got the audit done from at least those hospitals which were publicly saying that we lost 12 patients, not 24 patients, we lost these many patients. Why couldn't get that? They got that data, and that is so surprising. And that is the reason I think they are absenting from the discussion today. I think this is something which, and you are right, that people have no sensitivity towards even after deaths, that they can come out clean. And naturally, it is very difficult to actually tell in the cause of death, basically, generally cardiopulmonary arrest. Naturally, if there is an oxygen deficit, it will lead to cardiopulmonary arrest. Every person will die only when there is a cardiac arrest and a respiratory arrest. That's any illness, anything, somebody dies means he is not breathing, he or she is not breathing, and the heart has stopped. Then only we declare somebody dead. So this is something they are hiding behind this phrase, cardiopulmonary arrest, and that will be consequence of, like I think Abantika mentioned, complication. It is not complication. If you say it would be a negligence. Now, how you put that negligence on the hospital or on the Delhi government or Maharashtra government or Kerala government or Chhattisgarh government, that is for the courts to make a decision and the compensation for those who have died because of the lack of oxygen, at least documented once.
Yes.
So that is something, is a very technical thing it will be very, very difficult for any audit now, because what you need to know at that moment of time when these patients were there, how much was the level of the oxygen in the oxygen generating plant or their liquid oxygen tank. Because what happens actually when the oxygen may not have finished and they may still be getting oxygen, but the kind of pressure required for the ventilator, for the high flow oxygen, that is not maintained. So that will be amount to oxygen deficit.
Correct. No, so Dr. Mishra, I wanted to pick up that exact point. And at the risk of sounding a little technical, but I think we need to do that because this is a very, very serious and crucial issue. But Dr. Malik, if the hospital at that point claimed, and now I'm not talking about one specific hospital, many did, that there have been deaths due to lack of oxygen. Like Dr. Mishra is mentioning, it doesn't mean that there was emptiness in those cylinders. It just means probably that it fell below a certain level which is required to help a person artificially get some more oxygen into their system to keep them alive during COVID. And if that evidence is there, as this letter suggests, then should that not be enough? Why are we looking at examples where even panels of doctors are saying, well, the death summaries and the case sheets do not mention lack of oxygen, hence it isn't because of that?
Look, that is what Dr. Mishra has also said, that we should work with transparency. Once we scrutinize all the records, and if the records are not fault, then definitely what was the antecedent cause of the death? COVID is one thing, that was the illness. Cardiorespiratory arrest is no cause of death. Cardiopulmonary arrest is the terminal event which happens in every death. So what was the complication which caused death? That should also have been mentioned in the case sheet and the records. So having said that, it is very important that a complete transparent investigation should be done into it, and the fact should come in the public domain. Now, even in the death form, we mention each and everything, that why this death occurred and was there any complication. It is not only the comorbid conditions or other conditions which have led to the death, but also any complication, anything went wrong. That should also have been mentioned in the record. Moreover, whenever these kind of deaths occur, then at times we do the postmortems also. I don't know whether it was done or not, but then also we can come to the cause of the death in a more better way. And we must also understand one thing, that for hospitals, it was, on one side was a devil and on the other side was a sea. If they were refusing admissions because of the paucity or scarcity of oxygen and they are dying on the roads, then also the medical negligence was coming on the hospitals. And if the hospitals were admitting and there was no oxygen and the patient was dying because of this thing, then also the cause of medical negligence was coming on their head. So there are many deeper questions which needs to be addressed. And it is very important for us to fix the problem in such a way that, these things, number one, they should never happen in future. And number two, the justice should also be given to the patients who have, unfortunate patients, probably who have died because of the oxygen deficiency. But it is undeniable that in public domain also, in media also, in Twitter also, so a lot of doctors, they have commented of the hospital, especially the senior doctors, those who are in the administration like medical superintendent and directors of the hospitals, they have come on the media and they have also said that few deaths have occurred. Some of them have told the number of deaths also, like Batra Hospital director, he specifically mentioned that 12 people have died because of the oxygen deficiency. So if 12 people have died, it should reflect not only in the records in the case sheet, but also in the death form also. So I think with transparency, we need to go to the depth of this problem. And my momentous and critical concern is that, of course, the justice should be given to the people, those who have died. And of course, now we should also see what went wrong there, because future waves, maybe third or maybe fourth, might also come. And these kind of cases, we should have zero tolerance to any mortality occurring because of oxygen deficiency. It is in fact very sad. And we should also fix this problem in such a way that in future it should not happen at all.
Yes, and in what aspect of life, or in what profession, in what field is there no accountability, except when it comes to governance? You can come and say what you want, make the announcements that you feel like, go ahead, go back on it, refuse to answer, be in denial, whatever. And it's shocking how brazen it's getting day by day. I mean, I also have the BJP representative joining me right now. She's had some trouble, technical trouble, so she's joining us now. But Mamta, I mean, the police and some, doctors now want us today to believe that nobody died due to oxygen when the MD of that hospital was on national television, that day and after that, crying, breaking down, narrating his own horror and experiences of what had happened. And now the Delhi police expects the court to believe that it wasn't because of lack of oxygen.
So, good evening, Tanvi. First of all, my condolences to all those families who have lost their loved ones during the COVID pandemic in Delhi and even in Jaipur Golden Hospital. Now, as far as Delhi police is concerned, Tanvi, we all know that health happens to be the state subject, and the panel which was set up to investigate this whole thing was set up by Delhi government. And that is the panel which has handed over the complete report stating that the deaths in Jaipur Golden Hospital were not caused due to lack of oxygen. Now, what do we expect police to do? Police cannot change the report handed over by the experts, and if they can't do this, that it is not their prerogative. It's not their duty. It doesn't fall under their duties. So this is the question which should be thrown at the Delhi government. I'm surprised how come there is nobody from Aam Aadmi Party or Delhi government today to talk about this. That how come the entire this panel is saying, which was set up by Delhi government, that these deaths were not caused due to oxygen, lack of oxygen. Because if all of us seen this, Tanvi, during second wave or even during first wave, that the Aam Aadmi Party government or Mr. Kejriwal was just playing politics over, lives of people. I remember when Delhi needed 415 metric ton oxygen on daily basis, Mr. Raghav Chadha and Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, the CM, used to come on various channels, and he has said this on record, both of them, that we require 900 metric tons or 700 metric ton oxygen, because I don't know why did they lie. Probably they wanted to create that panic situation and just put this on central government. I mean, what kind of a game is this?
Sorry, I'm a little confused. I understand and I completely agree with you, Mamta. The Delhi government and the Aam Aadmi Party needs to take some of our questions. But I'm a little confused about what you're saying right now. Are you saying the Delhi government and all hospitals just cried foul and cried hoarse and lied about oxygen shortage, that there was no oxygen shortage and hence nobody died of oxygen shortage?
No, yes, Tanvi, there was no oxygen shortage ever in Delhi because the requirement Raghav Chadha and Arvind Kejriwal ji was going to various channels and saying that we need 900 metric ton oxygen. If you calculate all the beds, oxygen or ICU or non-ICU beds, if you do the calculation, as per the calculation also, every day metric ton requirement was 400, and these were the people. I mean, the government was, I don't know why they were saying that we want.
Okay, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, and I only wish you had actually watched Mirror Now at the time this story broke. You would have had answers by now, because we exhaustively debated this with medical experts. So let me try and explain it to you why. The calculation that you're referring to, which is part of this interim report by a committee that got leaked, does a very basic calculation based on a mathematical formula of fixed variables, constants. So they said 400 beds into every day XYZ is your oxygen demand, and hence it's 400 metric ton. I think you would know it like any other person on this panel. No hospital, Dr. Mishra, no hospital was only working with those limited beds which were on paper. In every hospital, there were additional people in each room, each ward, in the corridor, next to the staircase, next to the lobby, wherever possible. They were taking on patients to try and save as many lives as possible. Can we really look at a fixed formula which works in normal circumstances and say this is what it was?
Tanvi, I just wanted to say that let's not hide behind how much was required, how much Kejriwalji was making politicization of this whole issue. At least Batra Hospital Medical Director, Jaipur Golden Medical Superintendent, Gangaram Hospital, they all accepted. So why can't we straight away question those people who said that we have had these deaths in my hospital? At least that much should be done. And naturally, I don't know whether Delhi police take cognizance of the television clip or something where you just showed they showed the clip again of the Jaipur Golden Medical Superintendent. So I think this just needs, I told you from the beginning, it's a honesty which is far cry in our system, transparency, nobody bothers, and we are lacking even sensitivity towards when we say nobody died. This is what I also observed when Parliament question was being answered by our new minister. I said at least he could have said at the end that although no government or union territory has provided me that the deaths happened due to oxygen deficit, but by our own personal knowledge, by media reports, we understand that there was an oxygen shortage. Whether it was made out or it was real, that's a moot point. But people did struggle to get oxygen and people died, whether in the ambulance, whether on the road, whether at home or in hospital. I think at least that much sensitivity we should have instead of just saying plainly that nobody died of oxygen deficit. I think that's a very, very silly thing to do when so many patients have died, and we know that from various sources. We all know that. Heart in heart, everybody knows that. And is still maintaining that I think it's a lack of sensitivity.
Yes. Completely out of time. So I'm going to take that as the wrap-up point here. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining me on this conversation. This is what it is, as Dr. Mishra said. Everybody knows it. Everybody believes. Because everybody experienced it. We saw people on streets. We saw people outside hospitals. Many of us saw the state of affairs inside hospitals. We had our own loved ones gasping for breath. We were the ones running around, hospital to hospital, oxygen supplier to oxygen supplier, and crying hoarse. We spend hours, day after day after day, networking, trying to figure who can help us in the time of need. And so it really makes me angry when government after government and their entities turn around and tell us that no, nobody in this country died due to lack of oxygen. For all of those who outraged when that answer was submitted to the parliament, I want each and every of the state governments and political parties to come and explain to us now. Let one of them give us a written answer. Let one of them officially say how many died in their state because of lack of oxygen. Everybody wants to whitewash. Everybody wants to shrug responsibility. Everybody wants to simply talk about the good part. Forget their mistakes. Forget the mess they made. Forget the lives we lost. And pretend as if everything is hunky-dory. It doesn't matter how many reports you put in writing saying oxygen shortage did not kill anybody. It's the truth that all of us know. Thank you for joining us.